Chapter: An Odd Young Woman.
Last year, the caravan's ship had tied up at a village not far from these parts. We'd had to buy meat for the restaurant and were detained on shore for a while. 60 kilometers away began a dangerous stretch of the river that would not allow the ship to move at night. The navigational lights weren't operating on some stretches of the river. So as not to waste this time, we started making announcements over our outside loudspeaker and the local radio about an upcoming evening of entertainment on the ship. The white ship at the shore twinkling with so many lights and the music pouring from it always attracted the local youth. This time, too, nearly the entire young population of the village lined up for the gangway. First, like everyone who steps on deck for the first time, they rush to go around and see everything. After crossing the main, middle, and upper decks, they ultimately clustered in the bar and restaurant. The female half, as a rule, dance, and the male half tended to drink. The unusual situation on the ship, plus the music and alcohol, always puts them in an excited state that sometimes causes the crew quite a bit of trouble. Almost always, they didn't have enough time, and a collective request would begin to extend their pleasure for just a half hour, then more and more. That time, I found myself alone in my cabin, and I heard the music coming from the restaurant. I was trying to readjust the caravan's upcoming itinerary. All of a sudden, I felt someone staring at me. I turned around and saw her eyes through my window. There was nothing surprising in that. Visitors were always interested in looking into the cabins on the ships. I stood up and opened the window. She didn't go away. Embarrassed, she kept looking at me. I felt like doing something for this woman standing all alone on the deck. I thought, why isn't she dancing like the others? Might she have known some misfortune? I offered to show her the ship, and she nodded in silence. I led her around the ship and showed her the office, whose elegant furnishings always amazed visitors: the rug covering the floor, the soft leather furniture, the computers. Then I invited her to my cabin, which consisted of a bedroom, office in a sitting room decorated with rugs and magnificent furniture, and television and a video player. At the time, it probably gave me pleasure to impress this intimidated village girl with the achievements of civilized daily life. Thinking I would completely wow her with my chic, I opened a box of candies for her, poured 2 goblets of champagne, and turned on a video of Vika Tsiganova singing Love and Death. There were other songs as well on the cassette, performed by my favorite singers. She took the barest of sips of champagne, watched me closely, and asked,
"It's been very hard, hasn't it?"
I'd expected all sorts of things, only not that question. The journey had indeed been hard. We'd had difficulty navigating the river, and the crew of sailors, cadets from the River Institute, were smoking grass and pilfering the store. We were often behind schedule and couldn't get to the settlements where announcements had been made about the caravan's arrival by the scheduled time. The burden of these and other cares often gave me no chance to admire the riverbank landscape or simply get a good night's sleep. I said something absurd to her like, "It's all right, we'll get through," and turned toward the window and drank my champagne. She and I talked about something else, listened to the radio, and talked until the ship docked at the shore at the end of our pleasure cruise. Then I saw her to the gangway. Returning to my cabin, I noted to myself that there was something odd and unusual in that woman, and I was left with a light and bright feeling after being with her. That night, for the first time in many days, I got a good night's sleep. Now I realized that the woman on the ship was Anastasia. So that was you, Anastasia?
Yes. There in your cabin, and I memorized all the songs I sang for you in the forest. They were playing while we were talking. Do you see how simple it all is?
How did you come to be on the ship?
I was interested in how all this happens with you, how you live. After all, Vladimir, I've always dealt only with summer people. That day I ran to the village, sold the dried mushrooms the squirrels had gathered, and bought a ticket for your pleasure cruise. Now I know a lot more about the category of people you call entrepreneurs, and now I know you well. I am very, very guilty before you. I didn't know it would work out this way, that I would change your destiny so greatly. Only there is nothing I can do, since they determined to carry out this plan, and they are subject only to God. Now you and your family will have to overcome great hardships and adversities for a while, and then it will all pass.
While still not understanding what specifically Anastasia was talking about, I sensed intuitively that something was being revealed to me that went beyond the usual notions of our existence, and that this something would affect me directly. I asked Anastasia to tell me in greater detail what she meant talking about the changes in my destiny and the hardships. Listening to her, I could not have guessed how precisely what she predicted would come to pass in real life. In her story, Anastasia once again took me back to the events of the year before.
Then, on the ship, you showed me everything, even your cabin. You treated me to candies, offered me champagne, and then escorted me to the gangway. But I didn't leave right away. I stood on shore near some bushes, and through the bar's shining windows, I could see the local youth dancing and having fun there. You showed me everything but hadn't taken me to the bar. I guessed why. I was dressed inappropriately. I was wrapped up in a kerchief, my top was unfashionable, and my skirt was very long. But I could have taken off the kerchief. My top was neat and clean, and I had smoothed my skirt with my hands carefully on my way to see you.
I actually hadn't taken Anastasia to the bar that evening because of her rather odd clothing, under which, as had now become clear, this young woman was concealing extraordinary beauty that made her stand out sharply next to anyone else. I said, "Anastasia, why did you need that bar? Would you have danced there in your galoshes? And how would you have known the dances of today's youth?"
I wasn't wearing galoshes then. When I exchanged the mushrooms for money to buy a ticket to your ship, I borrowed shoes from that woman. Old shoes, it's true, and they were tight on me, but I cleaned them with grass. And dancing. I just need one little peek, that's all. And how I can dance.
Did I insult you?
No. Only if you'd gone to the bar with me. I don't know whether this is good or bad, but events might have developed differently, and such a thing would probably not have occurred. But now, I don't regret that what happened.
So what happened? What so terrible happened?
After you saw me off, you didn't return to your cabin right away. You first stopped in to see the captain, and the two of you headed for the bar. For you, this was an ordinary event. When you walked in, you immediately made an impression on the crowd. The captain was wearing his uniform, tightly belted. You were the famous Maigret, although elegant and outwardly respectable, well known to many on shore. The owner of a caravan that was unusual for people around these parts. You realized full well that you were making an impression on the people around you. You sat down at a table with 3 young women from the village. They were all of 18 and had just graduated from high school. They immediately brought your table champagne, candies and new wine glasses that were better and handsomer than the ones that had been there before. You took one of the girls by the hand, leaned toward her, and started saying something into her ear, and I realized this was what's called compliments. Then you danced with her a few times, talking the whole time. The girl's eyes were shining. It was as if she were in another fairy tale world. You took her out on deck and showed the girl the ship, as you had me, brought her to your cabin, and treated her to the same things as you had me, champagne and candies. You behaved a little differently with the young woman than you had with me. You were cheerful. With me you were serious and even sad, but with her you were cheerful. I could see this well through the shining windows of your cabin, and maybe then I wished a little I could be in that girl's place.
You're saying you were jealous, Anastasia?
I don't know. It was an unfamiliar emotion for me.
I recalled that evening and those young village girls trying so hard to look older and more modern. In the morning, the ship's captain and I laughed again at their nocturnal escapade. At the time, in the cabin, I realized the girl was in such a state that she was prepared for anything. But I had no thought of taking her. I told Anastasia this, to which she replied,
You still took her heart. You went out on deck, there was a fine rain, and you threw your jacket over the girl's shoulders and then brought her back to the bar.
Do you mean to say, Anastasia, you were standing in the bushes in the rain the whole time?
That's all right. It was a fine rain, gentle. It just hampered my view. And I didn't want my skirt and kerchief to get wet. They were my mama's. I inherited them from my mama. But I was very lucky. I found a cellophane bag on shore. I took them off, put them in the bag, and hid them under my top.
Anastasia, if you hadn't gone home and it started to rain, you could have come back to the ship.
No, I couldn't. You'd seen me off and you had other concerns. It was all winding up anyway. When the time came for the evening to end, and the ship was supposed to leave, at the girl's request, and mainly at the request of the girl who had been with you, you held the ship back. Everything was in your power then, including their hearts, and you were drunk on that power. The local youth were grateful to the girl, who also felt endowed with power through you. They had forgotten all about the young men who were in the same bar with whom they have been friends since school. You and the captain escorted them to the gangway. You went back to your cabin. The captain went up to the bridge, and the ship blew its whistle and slowly, very slowly, began casting off. The girl you had danced with stood on shore among her girlfriends and the local boys seeing the ship off. Her little heart was beating so hard, it was as if it were trying to burst from her chest and fly away, and her thoughts and feelings were confused. Behind her were the black outlines of the village houses with their extinguished lights, and in front of her the white ship was pulling away from shore forever, its many lights burning, generously pouring music over the water and the nighttime shore. You were on that departing white ship, you who had said all those beautiful words she had never heard before, bewitching and tempting words. And all this was moving away from her, slowly and forever. Then she got her nerve up in front of everyone. The young woman made a fist and shouted desperately, "I love you, Vladimir," then again and again. Did you hear those cries?
Yes, I did.
It was impossible not to hear them, and the men from your crew heard them too. Some of them came out on deck and laughed at the young woman. I didn't want them to laugh at the girl. After a while, as if realizing something, they stopped laughing. But you didn't come out on deck, and the ship kept moving slowly away. She thought you couldn't hear her, and she kept shouting persistently, "I love you, Vladimir." Then her girlfriend started helping her, and they shouted together. I was curious to know what this feeling was. Love, that made man lose control of himself. Or maybe I wanted to help the young woman, and I shouted along with them. "I love you, Vladimir." At that moment, I actually forgot that I can't just say words, that they have to have feelings behind them, a consciousness and authenticity of natural information. Now I know how strong that feeling is. And not all that subject to reason, either. That village girl started pining away and drinking, and I had a hard time helping her. Now she's married and immersed in daily cares. And I've had to add to my own and her love.
The story of the young woman disturbed me a little. Anastasia's story resurrected in detail my memory of that evening. Everything truly had happened as she said. It was real. Anastasia's unique declaration of love made no impression on me then. Now that I've seen her way of life and become familiar with her worldview, she'd begun to seem rather unreal, even though she was sitting beside me and I could easily reach out and touch her. My awareness, accustomed to using other criteria for evaluation, did not perceive her as an existing reality. If at the beginning of our encounter I'd been drawn to her, now she was no longer evoking the former emotions. You mean to say you consider the appearance of these new feelings in you coincidental?
They're desired and important. They're even pleasant, but I wanted you to love me the same way. I realized that when you knew me and my world a little more closely, you wouldn't be able to perceive me as an ordinary person. You might even be afraid sometimes. And that is what happened. I'm the one to blame. I've made many mistakes. For some reason, I was agitated the whole time. I rushed and didn't manage to explain. It all ended up rather foolishly, didn't it? Am I right? Do I need to reform?
At these words, she gave the merest sad smile, touching her own chest, and I was immediately reminded of the event of that morning when I had been with Anastasia.
Chapter Bugs.
That morning I decided to perform Anastasia's morning routine with her. At first, everything was going fine. I stood under the tree and touched different shoots. She told me about the herbs, and then I lay down beside her on the grass. We were completely naked, but even I wasn't cold, perhaps, of course, because she and I have been running through the forest together. A magnificent mood. I felt a kind of lightness, and not just physical. It seemed to be inside me. It all started when I felt a tingling on my thigh. I raised my head and saw bugs of some kind, ants and, I think, beetles on my thigh and leg. I gave a swipe to slap them, but missed. Anastasia grabbed my hand and held it.
Don't touch them.
Then she knelt before me, bowed, and pressed my second hand to the ground. I lay there as if crucified. I tried to free my hands, but nothing doing. It felt impossible. Then I gave a jerk, exerting quite a bit of effort. She restrained me without especially tensing, even smiling all the while. On my body, I felt more and more crawling, prickling, biting and tingling bugs, and I concluded they were starting to eat me up. I was in her hands, literally and figuratively, and I assessed the situation. No one knew where I was. No one was going to wander in here, and if they did, they would see my gnawed bones, if they saw any bones at all. All sorts of things flashed through my brain then, and on the basis of all that, probably, my instinct for self-preservation suggested the sole possible solution. With all my strength and desperation, I bit Anastasia's bare breast, and at the same time shook my head from side to side. I unclenched my teeth as soon as she cried out. Anastasia let me go, jumped up, held her breast with one hand, and waved upward with the other, trying to smile. I jumped up too and shouted at her, feverishly shaking the crawlers off me. You wanted to feed me to those vipers, you forest witch, and I won't give in so easily. Still waving and trying with all her might to smile to everything standing guard all around, Anastasia looked at me and walked slowly to her lake, not at her usual run, her head lowered. I stood there a little longer, trying to figure out what was going on. Return to the river. But how would I find my way? Follow Anastasia? But why? Nonetheless, I went to the lake. Anastasia was sitting on the shore, rubbing some herb in her palms and squeezing its juice on her breasts, where you could see the large bruise from my bite. It must have hurt. But what was her purpose in holding me down? For a while I shifted from foot to foot in silence, and then I asked, "Does it hurt?" Without turning her head, she replied,
It hurts my feelings more.
Silently, she continued to squeeze the herb juice. Why did you think to play a joke like that on me?
I wanted what was best. The pores of your skin are all plugged up. They don't breathe at all. The little bugs would have cleaned them out. It's not that painful, it actually feels good.
And the snake? It was poking its tongue in my foot?
It wasn't going to do anything bad to you, and if it had released poison, then that would only have been on top, and I would have wiped it away immediately. The skin and muscles on your heel are numb.
That's from an accident. We were silent for a while. It was a foolish situation. Not knowing what to say, I asked, how come someone, that invisible someone, didn't help you like before, when I fainted?
He didn't help because I was smiling. And when you started biting, I tried to smile.
I felt a little awkward. I snatched up a touch of grass lying next to me, rubbed it in my palms with all my strength, and then knelt before her and started rubbing her bruise with my wet palms.
End of chapter. Join us for the next segment of Anastasia, Book 1 of the Ringing Cedar series. Dreams are the creation of the future.